Hey everyone, hey Wellness Crew, and welcome to today's reading of the Gene Keys Golden Path, Love, a Guide to Your Venus Sequence. I'm Jenna and I'm very excited to read this to you, as this has been such a life-changing book for me personally and has helped me so much in my process of using human design and the Gene Keys for personal development. Exercising the mental body. One of the things that happens to us during our third 7-year cycle of development is that our minds receive the imprint of the sacred wound as it moves up the planes of our being from our earlier cycles. We have seen how the wound itself is received at conception, then imprinted during the 3 trimesters of gestation, to be made manifest later in our 3 7-year developmental cycles. Because the mental wound is the last aspect to develop in the 3rd trimester, it is the first aspect we must tackle if we are to move any deeper in our healing process. This is why we begin our deeper process of contemplation here. Just as there is a subtle mental plane, so we might extend our thinking even further to encompass the idea that we also have a mental body. This allows us a broader conception of how we build up our thinking process throughout our lives. It might also be helpful to see the mental body as a subtle bioenergetic sheath that extends throughout our aura. As we have seen during our teenage cycle, we have a natural affinity for the supernatural, and our mental body is vast, extending out far into the holographic cosmos. As we get older, our thinking tends to undergo a closing down, and thus our mental body shrinks and contracts to encompass only as much as we allow it to. During our second 7-year cycle, in which the sacred wound is imprinted through our astral, emotional body, we experience an emotional contraction as we learn our primary emotional defense strategies for coping with the pain of the world. This in turn is then transferred to our mental body during this third teenage cycle. This time, however, the contraction is mental. Although the wound may be emotional in origin, it then closes off aspects of the mind. Thus, we establish an unconscious pattern of thinking whose purpose is to protect us from hurt. At the same time, this deep fear creates an undercurrent to our thinking, which prevents us from seeing life as it is, without judgment. In the Venus sequence, this pattern is represented by the sphere of your IQ and its specific gene key and line. As we examine the way in which we think about ourselves, we will see how it influences the way we think about others, and therefore the way in which we relate. The sphere of your IQ really represents a blind spot in your psyche. Once you begin to see this pattern, you can begin the process of dismantling it through awareness. This is really a kind of mental exorcism, as we throw out old unconscious belief patterns that keep us from relating with the world in an open-hearted way. As you go about this extraordinary subtle process, you can really contemplate how you have allowed the way you see the world to be compromised. This is a process that will take some time, and that will continue throughout your journey along the golden path. Reaction and ignition, triggers and sparks. There are specific junctions along the golden path where a great deal of dynamic force is held under pressure by our conditioning. This makes the shadow issues there more intense, but also provides us with an opportunity to catalyze swift transformation. 3 spheres in particular have this quality: the sphere of evolution, the sphere of IQ, and the sphere of our culture. Each of these spheres acts like a trigger in our psyche, so that as we train our awareness on the issues it represents, we may open a floodgate inside us. As was mentioned earlier, the Venus strain, the actual living transmission of awakening energy behind the Venus sequence, follows a watery allegory. as the currents of the Venus stream flow along the pathway of karma. They pierce the sphere of the IQ like a sharp jet of water traveling under pressure, rather like an underground geyser erupting to the surface. The sphere of your IQ represents a mental pattern that holds back the pressure of emotion deep within the cells of your body. This is why in relationships we can be so easily triggered by certain issues, people, or vocal tones. Whenever a low frequency emotional pattern is triggered by another person, there you can see this pattern at work. It is intriguing and perhaps shocking to realize how the mental patterns we formed as a teenager still persist inside us as mature adults. Many of us never reach a fuller mental or emotional maturity for the rest of our lives. It takes a lot of courage to take responsibility for one's own shadow patterns. What this means is that when we experience an emotional conflict with a partner, what is often occurring is that two childhood patterns are fighting against each other. Without awareness, such patterns can be very painful and may seem relentless. It is very important and worthwhile to dig deeply into the sphere of your IQ and the gene key that corresponds to it. This is a place to put your full attention. It is also a good idea to travel back in your memory and rekindle some of the major events that marked out your teenage years. The events we remember most easily are memorable for a good reason, so they are a good place to begin our contemplation. Often, when we bring our attention to a specific set of memories, then the cells that carry those memories release other connected memories. Remember, contemplation involves more than just thinking about something. It is a living reenactment of the patterns themselves. As you bring them to light so your awareness can see them clearly for what they are, triggers that set off highly charged emotional issues. The huge benefit of doing this inner work is that awareness changes everything. Instead of being a victim of a reaction pattern, your new mindset ignites a deep cellular healing process. As you change the way you think about yourself and others, so your emotions begin to travel more freely through your astral body. This process is discussed in more depth as we enter the pathway of intelligence. The important thing to realize is that the same energy that made us react also ignites our healing. So, what I really love about that passage is that it's talking about your shadow, right? So, there's the shadow, the gift, and the city. And when we're talking about these three things, we're talking about an evolution coming from the shadow, which may be the triggering event, going into the gift, which is where we can become a little bit more enlightened, a little bit more realized with whatever the shadow was. And then the city is living at your most authentic, most fully formed self. So that's why I love this passage so much. And thank you so much for the like. I really appreciate that. The shadow. It is interesting that in order to unlock the deeper currents of our emotions, we must first unlock our minds. The shadow of your IQ tells the same story in every human being, just in different ways. The common story is that at some point we began to believe ourselves unworthy of love. Out of this deep-seated belief, we developed a narrow way of thinking and behaving that often only emerges when we feel emotionally threatened or uncomfortable. When you contemplate the shadow, look at the way you behave when you feel stressed or under pressure. See how your mind contracts around the emotions that lie beneath the behavior. It is important to get in touch with the teenager inside you and their feelings. The shadow of your IQ is a pattern that you developed whenever you felt overwhelmed by the power of your emotions. Try and see how this gene key in its line holds an incredible key for you. When you can see the power this pattern has over you, then you will open up the floodgates to a deeper process of cellular healing that may go on for some time. As a trigger in your psyche, this shadow should be approached with an open mind and given as much time to unfold as it needs. The gift. The gifts of our IQ are manifold. Once our mind has been freed from holding back our fuller maturity, an enormous amount of energy is released through our body and brain. Having said this, neural pathways take some rewiring. We will have to be continually alert for the shadow pattern whenever we experience emotional discomfort. However, the great news is that as you open your mind once again to the possibility that you are worthy of love, then you become more intelligent. Your IQ represents your mental alacrity, but it also involves something else that is not a part of the average IQ test: optimism. Optimism is not the same as positive thinking, which can be natural or forced as a technique. Optimism comes from drawing in high frequency thought forms. It is the nature of a true open mind. The gift of your IQ is therefore more than just being clever or intellectual. It is about open circuit thinking. The mark of true intelligence is the certainty that you are fully worthy of love. When you consider the gene key of your IQ, see which qualities shine through you when you live with this kind of a loving, accepting, and forgiving open mind. The city. The city of your IQ allows you access to the quantum field of the whole universe. The mental plane can only take your consciousness so far, for there is an awareness system in your body that allows you to transcend the limits of your thinking. This involves the subtler bodies that lie beyond the mental body. The mental body has a higher counterpart known as the atmic body, and this allows you to experience a depth of consciousness that is far, far beyond the mind. The atmic body can only relay truth, and it does so through silence, once the mind has fallen silent. When the Venus sequence has been ignited inside your DNA, the expansion of your consciousness will continue on its own. The trigger point of the sphere of your IQ goes on unlocking energy through your being. And the wider your mind opens, the more love comes pouring through your heart. You should therefore take the city of your IQ seriously. When you examine the shadow of your IQ, see what manner of vastness it is holding back inside you, and hold this quality always in your heart. The 6 lines of your IQ. Each of the 6 lines of your IQ represent a different kind of psychological bias. These are generalized modes or styles of thinking that underpin our behavior. You will also see that each line has a shadow keynote. This relates to a pattern of thinking and behavior that we developed between the age of 14 and 21. IQ line keynotes. Line 6, the objective mind, absent. Line 5, the practical mind, defensive. Line 4, the influential mind, inflexible. Line 3, the flexible mind, evasive. Line 2, the brilliant mind, provocative. Line 1, the contemplative mind, hidden. Line 1, the contemplative mind, hidden. The foundation of all mental genius is the ability to contemplate. You may well think that contemplation is something that anyone can do, but this is not always the case. Contemplation takes discipline and open-mindedness. The contemplative mind also underpins a contemplative lifestyle, so if you have a first-line IQ, then this kind of lifestyle will suit you very well. You need plenty of time to peruse. You need regular breaks throughout your day in order for insight to percolate. Contemplation is a way of being. It is easygoing and rhythmical, and enjoys a kind of meandering lifestyle in which there is a consistent blend of interior focus and exploration. A person with a first line IQ will be one of the most fascinating people you will ever encounter. Because of their internal focus, you may not even realize how deep such a person is. There have always been contemplative types living among us. In times gone by, these people of the first line IQ might have taken refuge in the great religious traditions, or they would have become our wise ones. Contemplation thrives on aloneness. So if you have a first line IQ, then those around you need to understand this genetic imperative that drives you. This does not mean that you have to keep going away to be alone. It means that you carry your aloneness around inside you. It is a palpable inner force, carrying with it great love and patience. As a shadow frequency, however, this kind of psychology is very uncomfortable, both for you and for others. The first line has a natural tendency towards turning inwards. As a teenager, you may well have dealt with pain and intense emotion by turning inwards and withdrawing into your mind. This is the hidden mind. No one ever knows what is going on inside a child like this. They may physically lock themselves in their bedroom, or they may just clam up and tell you nothing. If you have a first line IQ, then you need to learn to find a way to safely express what is going on inside you. This does not always have to be through spoken words. There are many levels of communication available to the contemplative mind. Sometimes a poem, a picture, a smile, a touch, or a clear action can say far more about our inner state than any spoken word. Later in life, the shadow of our first line IQ can make such people very difficult to get to know, as their feelings may have become so habitually internalized that they are difficult to access. If you have a first line IQ, then anything that helps you towards a greater self expression will be hugely beneficial for you and for the world. Line 2, the brilliant mind, provocative. When our IQ is refracted through the second line theme, it literally shines out with the beauty of its genius. This is a mind that is always surprising, as it is always making quantum leaps. The brilliance of the second line truly comes alive in the sphere. These kinds of minds are the great voyagers of the mental plane. They will take human thinking right to the edge of its capability. This is thinking that combines both left brain logic with right brain vision. Such minds are often seen as far ahead of the age they lived through. These are inventive minds that often lead pioneering breakthroughs. They may appear in almost any domain of human endeavor, from the sciences to the arts and music. The second line mind is not just about thinking. It presupposes a highly expressive and creative life. These are people designed to catch the limelight. At the shadow frequency, the second line is all provocation. It is simply unable to hold back its anger and resentment. These are the kinds of teenagers who are often seen as highly rebellious and even obnoxious. They will strike out when they feel threatened or vulnerable, or if they do not strike out at another, they will take it out on themselves in some way. They rail against the fates and are often deeply misunderstood by others. Of all the lines, the second line IQ is most likely to be unjustly punished for their behavior. Even later in life, this pattern will still persist at difficult moments. In an adult, this may manifest as a tendency to explode in fits of rage that do not seem in any way matched to the higher issue at hand. The second line must therefore learn to manage their anger on the surface, but more importantly, they must understand where this pattern stems from. In most cases, it comes as a reaction to a feeling of being deeply misunderstood by others. This feeling cuts so deep that it becomes an assumption that is projected onto anyone the moment that emotions begin to run high. The secret of the second line is therefore to realize that it is not others who are responsible for your feelings, but you alone. The maturing of this realization can lead to a reframing of the pattern, which can then find a new and healthy creative outlet in the world. Line 3, the flexible mind, evasive. The third line pattern is founded upon its flexibility. This is a mindset that thinks on its feet. The beauty of the third line is the sheer scope of its knowledge. We should remember that we are looking here at mental belief systems that affect our relationships. The third line pattern is a mind that explores all kinds of belief systems and mental structures. This is what makes it so versatile and eventually can lead to a real gift for communicating with and listening to others. If you have a third line IQ, then others will always feel understood and accepted by you. You will have the ability to think sympathetically, which can lead to all kinds of possibilities. The third line mind is also invaluable in strategic thinking. Because it is so absorbent, it can help others in all kinds of ways. It may also have an unusual memory with the ability to access all kinds of weird and wonderful data when needed. The shadow of the third line pattern is about being evasive. These can be people who never give a straight answer to a question. This is a mental pattern that has learned to avoid the real issue by becoming adept at deflecting attention away from itself. Being evasive can also take many forms. During the teenage years, this is often a tendency to get easily bored and lose interest in things, for instance, in schoolwork. It can be a painful thing for a parent to witness their child seemingly throwing away the golden opportunity of their potential during this challenging cycle of life. One must remember that there is no fault in these kind of patterns. The third line always bounces back, so long as it is given the right mix of firm boundaries and creative understanding. In later relationships, the third line may, however, continue to find it challenging to relate with others because of this earlier pattern. The key, as ever, is awareness. Awareness of the pattern frees us from being a victim of the pattern. Then it becomes something we can work with in a creative way. Line 4, the influential mind, inflexible. So line 4 is in my profile. It's in my profile for all 3 of my spheres. If you have a fourth line IQ, and also line 6. Hi, Bahar. If you have a fourth line IQ, then you are born to be influential. Unlike the third line with its changing viewpoint, the fourth line tends to pursue things in a straight line, with unwavering focus and dedication. Thank you. These are people who often find a single arena that they love, and then they become masters of that arena. When we look around at the most influential people in the world or in history, we often see they are people who devoted their energy and attention towards a single goal within a single field of endeavor. This is what is required in order to arrive at a breakthrough. Thank you so much for the like. I really appreciate it. The fourth line also has the skill of communication. They not only have a great idea, they also have the means to convey it clearly to others. It's in the title of this live stream. It's the Gene Keys Golden Path Love, and it's by Richard Rudd. You can see the recipe for influence here. The fourth line IQ is a person that can use the mind as a means to relate more clearly and precisely, and with genuine warmth and heartfulness. When it comes to the shadows, we always see how our potential strengths become the very blind spot that keeps us trapped in a repeating low frequency pattern. Until we understand and see the pattern, we will never dismantle it. Here in the fourth line, we see inflexibility, the inability or unwillingness to bend our viewpoint to accommodate another person's views or feelings. As a pattern developed during our teenage cycle, this can become an entrenched belief or set of opinions about others or the world that attempts to keep us from feeling a deeper pain. Thank you so much for the like. I appreciate that. Often with the fourth line, the opinion is projected onto another, usually a parent. This can make it very difficult to communicate with a child or young adult. As with each of the 6 lines of the IQ, the pattern is rooted in a deep sense of our own unworthiness. Because we do not feel worthy of love, we project this onto those closest to us. In later life, the fourth line can feel increasingly isolated, unless they can come to terms with the feelings lying beneath their mind. The fourth line pattern is very difficult to dislodge if one tries to tackle it through the mind. It is often better to bypass the mind altogether and either work directly with the pattern at an emotional level or even directly with the physical body. So really quick, the fourth line is in my body graph. It is in my spheres. And I can definitely relate to this in a very big way. Thank you so much for that compliment. I really appreciate it. I can really relate to this in such a big way, and this has been really true for me. So I really highly suggest that you go to thegenekeys.com and go ahead and input your information, as well as going to ahumandesign.com and putting your information, getting your body chart, getting your information so that way you can follow along with this and learn more about human designs and the gene key. And the gene key is spelled GENEKEY. Line 5, the practical mind. The gene key, so it's 2 words, GENE space KEY, is based upon or an extension of human design. And human design is based upon I Ching, astrology, Kabbalah, a whole mix of things. And what it does is it really helps you understand how to develop or how to have your personal development, right? And it gives you a way to understand what your purpose is. And it also gives you a way to understand what your invocations can be, what your purpose is when it comes to work, what your purpose is when it comes to relationships, the patterns that you have in your life. So I like to do readings from the Gene Keys books by Richard Rudd because I just feel like it really helps people to see the patterns that they may have, to understand the 3 cycles, to understand that we do have these cycles that are just something that we have evolved from the ages of 1 to 7, 8 to 13, and 14 to 21. Line 5, the practical mind, defensive. And the last word that I'm saying when I'm talking about the lines is the shadow pattern. So we're talking about the lowest frequency. We're not talking about the higher frequencies. We're talking about the lowest frequencies. So I should have prefaced that with this. I probably should have said that first. In our journey along the golden path, we have seen the 5th line as a great problem solver, a fixer, and a self-empowered leader. If you have a 5th line IQ, then you are a catalyst for dynamic change and transformation. This is the kind of mind that can always sift through the haystack and within seconds locate the needle. The fifth line has an inherent ability to organize information in such a way that it is understood by anyone and everyone. The fifth line makes the complex accessible, bringing clarity to seemingly impenetrable issues. It sees both depth and detail, and it doesn't waste time or energy in flowery expression, but loves to bring things right down to their essence. Because of the above qualities, the fifth line has always been sought out by others for guidance or looked to for leadership and inspiration. When things get difficult or challenging in life, we all need the loving but penetrating wisdom of the fifth line. So many people never get to live out the wonderful potential of their higher purpose in life because a part of them never grows up. The mental patterns we develop as teenagers often stay with us for the rest of our lives, unless we go through some kind of a life-affirming crisis or awakening. The fifth line undermines itself by becoming a victim of its own self-pity. These are teenagers who fall into such a deep funk inside themselves, often convincing themselves that everyone is against them. This belief puts them constantly on the defense, making it very difficult for them to trust anyone who comes close. My name is Jenna. Once again, later in life, this is a pattern that will persist whenever one feels under threat, emotionally or otherwise. And once again, this pattern can only be broken by self-awareness. In the case of the fifth line, the self-awareness must be taken in very deeply because their mind can be so clever. The fifth line IQ can also be overly intellectual and can slide easily into a cynical arrogance. The dismantling of such patterns can require a complete gestalt shift for the fifth line, a process that is never easy, but is always very humbling and empowering. Thank you so much for the like. I really appreciate that. Line 6, the objective mind, absent. So I do have line 6 in my profile. I am a 4-6 in human design. So that is meaning that I have these two lines that are very much reflected in my body chart, in the gene keys. These are things that kind of are there. The lines are 6 different ways to see each gene key, to see each aspect, and you receive 2 different lines that kind of are patterns for your life. So just so that is something that's clear, there are 6 lines. In human design, you are given 2 lines, and you will kind of see how they play out and why it's so important to understand the lines when it comes to the specific gene keys and the gates in human design, which there are 64 of. And again, this is based off of the I Ching. That's just one of the concepts that is a part of this. So I'm talking about one of my lines here. And being absent is the shadow pattern. So again, the lowest frequency of the 3. So there's the shadow, the gift, and the city. And those 3 things are expressions that are shown in the gene keys. And again, the gene keys is a little bit of an offshoot, but a much deeper explanation of human design and how it can help you and correlate with you. The 6th line IQ is the only one of the 6 lines that can call itself wholly objective. Each of the other lines carries an agenda. At the higher frequencies, an agenda can be beneficial. For example, like an urge to be of service. whereas at the low frequencies, it is always self-serving. The sixth line, however, is designed to surf the mental plane without agenda, although getting to this stage may be a drawn-out process. On the way to achieving no agenda, the sixth line mind may well develop various viewpoints. Each view in turn will be dropped or transcended until a higher view arises that can see things for what they are without adding anything on top. The mind that sees in this way is rare indeed. To see things for what they are is the hallmark of a truly enlightened mind. It is the sign of a silent mind. This is the radical potential of the sixth line IQ. If you have this in your profile, then you will most probably lead an interesting life. You may live many lives within a single life until you finally arrive at your zenith, a place where IQ can no longer be measured and genius can no longer be quantified. In its most natural form, the sixth line mind reflects nature. Like the I Ching, it will mirror the terrestrial and celestial patterns of the ever-changing present. Out of this inner alignment can pour forth the voice of a wild, living wisdom, an objective wisdom that is the voice of nature itself. The shadow version of the sixth line IQ is expressed through a sense of absence. There is a sense in some teenagers of a vital aspect of their self-expression simply being absent. The eyes lose their luster. A kind of torpor seems to have a hold of their minds. In some respects, they appear to be disincarnate, disinterested, and disrespectful of everything. When this pattern persists in our relationships later on in life, then at times it may seem as though you become completely numb to emotions. The sixth line often thinks it has something wrong with it. This sense of absence that grips the mental body will also freeze the emotions tightly around the heart, choking the life force. To heal such a deep pattern, you must be very patient with yourself, and you will also need a patient partner. When your heart suddenly goes cold, it is a memory in the cells that has been triggered. It is not your fault. You simply have to be with the pattern, wrapping it in your awareness, knowing that it cannot survive so long as you bring your attention to it. If you wait, then sure enough, a shift will occur. Your heart will spontaneously re-engage when it feels ready. Over time, this will happen more readily and more quickly. Contemplating the sphere of your IQ. Having digested the 6 lines of the IQ, you may need some time to take in the sphere, your gene key, and how it all works inside you. Earlier on in this work, we spoke of the 3 different types of contemplation: mental, emotional, and physical. When you contemplate the sphere of your IQ, you are engaging the subtlest of these, the mental plane. Contemplation through your mental body often begins with doubt or confusion. Certainly, it begins with not knowing, and then you begin to think over the subject. You need to think about it in a sustained but unserious way. If you get too serious, then you will go into a kind of mental contraction, which will feel very uncomfortable. We have seen that the allegory of water likens the sphere of our IQ to the power of water to pierce rock. You can use the sharpness of your intellect to help you pierce the emotional shadow patterns that sometimes possess you. Part of the intellectual worldview that you formed in your teenage cycle will be based upon an unconscious notion of your own unworthiness. Use your newborn insight to deflate this worldview. To contemplate the sphere of your IQ, you will also have to cultivate a love of mystery. There are issues inside you that began as a teenager, and they remain unresolved to this day. You do not need to rush to be rid of them. Our healing is about entertaining all aspects of ourself, so you can invite the young adult inside you to be with you. Look at yourself and how you were during this time period. Think about those people you know at that age right now. Can you determine which of the 6 patterns they seem to be manifesting? You needn't rush out and find out anyone's time of birth. These patterns are there in everyone. And in talking about the time of birth, that is one of the pieces of information that you would put into a humandesign.com or genekeys.com to get your profile and to get your body graph chart. So that's one of the pieces of information. It is very important because as there is an astrological aspect of human design and the gene keys, that's just a heads up, just to let you know. Once you begin to listen and become familiar with the 6 lines and their themes, you will see them everywhere. The beauty of the Venus stream is that it is self-healing and self-revealing. Self-illumination is an unfathomable process that sneaks up on you as you learn how to contemplate. At the mental level, your mental body will begin to expand as you draw in more refined currents and thought forms from the mental plane. We live inside a holographic matrix, and insights occur whenever we pierce one of the veils between the many dimensions that make up our greater self. Remember that the Venus stream at this stage in our process is like an underground geyser bursting forth from the inner planes. So long as we give ourselves the right environment of compassion, patience, and inquiry, eventually we will experience the mystery of self-illumination. So that is what I have for today's reading of the Gene Keys Golden Path Love, a guide to your Venus sequence. And I will be doing a live stream on one of the Gene Keys today, and also the gate today. So the gate and the gene key are very much interrelated, and I will be doing a live stream coming up very shortly on those topics. Thank you so very much for joining me today. Thank you, Bahar, for engaging with me today. I really appreciate it. And I will see you on the next live stream. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and or join the membership tiers as it is popping off. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Be well, stay wild as well.